Hey everybody, how's it going today? So, I wanted to go over another book review. This one is Managing Oneself by Peter F. Drucker. One sec, I hope you guys see it here. There you go. Can you guys see it now? This one here. Managing Oneself by Peter F. Drucker. The great guru when it comes to managing oneself and the importance um, of what you have to know, basically, right, to manage yourself, basically, right. So, who is this guy, Peter Drucker? Well, he's according to many, he's really the founding father of the modern MBA system, as well as he was a writer, teacher, and consultant as well. And in the book, basically, it states that he founded the Peter Drucker Institute or something, Drucker Institute, for management, I think, down in California or something. But basically, what I'm going to do here today is just go over with you guys the actual book, basically, and the stuff which I got most value out of, and then of course I'm going to make it all personal. So I'm going to try to tell you guys from my point of view, and then you guys can also relate to me, and or but buy the book, of course, if you guys want, and then just read it your guys yourself, and get the book yourself. Um, so basically, Peter Drucker's main asset, I think, in my opinion, was what Anthony Robbins said, in the sense that focus is controlled by questions. So Peter Drucker, I believe, was the master of continuously asking questions. Effective questions, right? Because with a question then comes multiple answers, and then it also depends on how you interpret that question, etc. So first point I got out of the managing oneself was the importance of knowing what your strengths are. So it's really important, and effective questions to ask yourself, basically, what are my strengths? Now, Peter F. Drucker says, that when you ask that question, basically, right, there are those 3 tips which you should have in mind while you're asking that question. Tip number 1, you want feedback analysis, right? So, how I've actually took this, basically, is that um, to find out my strengths, basically, or my likes, I try to run like a 5 to 7 day experiment, basically, and see if I like it. And if I like it, of course, then I will continue running that experiment, basically, and get feedback analysis from it, right? Um, Another way to get feedback analysis as well is that Peter F. Drucker talks about how we're all blind to our own understanding of ourselves, basically. So you want feedback analysis from strangers, right? So if you one day singing at a bus stop, basically, and a stranger tells you sing wonderful, that then could be a good feedback analysis. I'm not sure, but he just says that you also have to listen to what third persons say. So it means not you and not your family, because of course your family and your friends, they'll also be biased, but yeah, so that's one way. Second one is Peter Drucker says, when you ask that question, what are my strengths? And when you run short-term experiments, and then you get feedback analysis, right? Second question is then to improve your strengths, basically. So once you have feedback analysis, then you can then basically, and then you understand, basically, what is the best thing for you to do, right? And then of course, then it's just improving on that, basically, right? Um, Peter Drucker said, quote, efficiency is doing better what is already being done. So it's really just experimenting, finding out what are your strengths, and just improving on that. Doubling down, basically, on your strengths. And then of course, Tito, like, third tip, when you ask that question, well, what are my strengths? Peter Drucker says that it's important to eradicate what he calls disabling ignorance, right? So of course we are all ignorant towards something in our lives, but Peter F. Drucker says that you want to eliminate that basically to open up your mind out to the possibilities, right? Whether it means reading another book, whether it means um, experimenting on something else, whether it means finding counterintuitive arguments towards your strength, basically, what you can improve on, whether it's listening to more people, whatever, right? But like we're all ignorant towards certain things in our lives, basically. Um, so with me, for instance, right? I would guess that one of my disabling ignorance was not reading enough books, right? Because I always thought that all you had to do is just search things online and that's it, right? Um, but I've figured out over time, over the experimenting, that reading books and becoming more eclectic and opening up my own mind, then I become more knowledgeable, much more curious, and I become much more of a complete person, right? Peter Drucker talks about it that um, we all have about two halves of our life, basically, right? So we are born, basically, and then we go through school, yeah, and then we grow up, we go through school, and we go through university, or some people don't. But once you start your um, career, job, or what you want to do in life, basically, right? That is the second half of your life, right? Now, what Peter Drucker says is that we should nurture human beings, right? So, like, we should be a nurtured human being, meaning that most people, when they get out of university, and then they go into their career, job, if that's what you want to do, right? Have only nurtured what they had studied. So if you like studied accounting, most people only nurture being an accountant. If you studied medicine, most people nurtured only being a pharmacist, doctor, right? And what Peter Drucker says is that coming out into the second half of your life, you should have already nurtured a more complete person in you, right? So like you should have like traveled a bit, you should have become more knowledgeable, better manners as well, etc. So that's just another part which you guys can also think about. And then of course like second part was after you've asked the question, what are my strengths? Then comes how do I perform, right? Now, according to Peter Drucker, really there are like readers and there are listeners. So some people read better more, and some people listen better, right? That you just have to depend on yourself. I'm more of a reader myself, right? And then of course, Tito, third question is how do I learn, basically, right? So um, according to Peter Drucker, basically, he says that that the modern education system is a really biased system because it assumes that everyone learns the same way, and that's really false. Really, I believe if you guys want to read the real high intellect, there's a guy named Howard Gardner from Harvard University. I think in 1983 he wrote a book called Frames of Mind, the theory of multiple intelligences, and in that book, basically he lists 7 different ways of how you can learn better, right? Now, according to me, basically, right, because I've followed that book, right. I'm more of a intrapersonal learner, meaning I just read a lot of books, basically, and then I try to find counterintuitive evidence, basically, and then myself I learn better just to like reading what I want, but of course reading a vast array of books, and then just grabbing knowledge and putting it into my mind, basically, and that's how I learn. But he also said that there have been many important people throughout our history who were not good schoolers, and he mentions in the book Winston Churchill. He said, he wasn't a good schooler. But then, of course, there were other famous people who did go to school and did like school, right? So it just, depends, I view education as a tool, so like our modern education system, I believe, is more like a tool than something that you actually have to go to. So if you think that the most effective outcome for you is to go in a 4 to 8 year career and stuff, and that's what you want to do, go ahead and go into it, right? But then, of course, there's been many other famous people of history who have never gone to school at all, and they've also done well in life. So it really depends, basically, one or the other. Now, the fourth question, which you would have to ask yourself, is what are my values? So, according to Peter Drucker, right, skills can be acquired, values not. Now, I'm not sure if that's true 100%, but I can tell you basically, right, that for me, the most important thing that I learned about what are your values is basically from the book The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, where he writes for you to put your personal value statement. I think it's called personal mission statement, basically, right? So where you list all your values, basically, which you want for yourself to be, basically, and then every morning you just read through that list once, basically. So these certain values you have to be, right. It's really important that you ingrain yourself in the values you want to be, because when you ingrain yourself and immerse yourself in your right values, basically, right, life is much easier, right. I think it was Sigmund Freud who said, we all have to know what our personal constitution is, right? So like what we admire and what we care about, because Freud said, our happiness will always be limited to that, anyways, So if you try to go out of who you are, basically, and what you stand for, well, you might get hurt, you might feel less happy, etc. So it's really important that you're aware of that. And then, of course, he writes as well, another test what you guys can do is, it's called the mirror test. That's how Peter Drucker explains it. And what he means by the mirror test, basically, is so sometimes during the morning time, you guys can do this, basically, is just to stand in front of the mirror, look yourself in the eyes, basically, and say, am I the person who I want other people to see? And if the answer is yes, well, then it's okay. And if the answer is no, well, then of course, there has to be something which you have to change, right? And Peter Drucker says, that's a really important question to ask, because by asking that question, basically, you can introspectively, what you have to change if you think something has to be changed of you, So that's a really important question. I do it actually every morning. So what I do is that when I get up, one of my morning rituals basically is to actually check how much I weigh, check the measurement of my waist, of my biceps, of my chest, and of my neck, basically. And then, of course, look myself in the bathroom mirror, and I always ask myself, am I the person people want for me to see? Because I think that's a really important question. And then, of course, lastly, Peter Drucker points out, how should I contribute? That's another good question you have to ask yourself, right? And what Peter Drucker means by then is that contribution means effective outcomes, results, right? So where are you going to place yourself in life, basically, for your maximum potential, basically. And of course, I can't be the one answering that for you. You have to answer that yourself, basically. I'm still, I'm in my early 20s myself, so I'm bouncing around jobs and stuff, experimenting, seeing what I want in life yet, still. But yeah, but I think that's a really important question as well, because you only got one life, so you gotta, live your life according to how you want to live your life. Um, another tip, real quick, before I head off. Peter Drucker says as well that's important to develop what he calls a a parallel career, and what he means by that um, is that it's like a second career on top of what you're doing. But he says the parallel career should be more towards helping out other people. It could be being a social entrepreneur, as how he calls it. Working for an NGO, helping out people, basically. And he says that's really important, basically, because then you also gain leadership skills. You become a leader, basically. You help other people, and in return you become respected. And so he says it's a really good thing. So I hope I hope I've encapsulated a bit about this book here, Managing Oneself by Peter F. Drucker. Still, in spite of what I said, I think the best thing is still to buy the book itself. It costs around $8.95 US, so it's not much. And I swear to God, you guys, this will revolutionize you guys' book, you guys' world, in you guys' life, really. Um, so I like to end it here by this quote from Peter Drucker. He said, "The greatest wisdom not applied to action and behavior is meaningless data." So it's not what you know, but it's what you do. So after you read this book, try to at least implement some of the points illustrated in the book, and I promise you it'll shift your life towards the more accurate you, basically. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you guys on the next book review. Ciao.